The millennial generation, even larger and more liberal than the baby boomers, has the potential to significantly change the country's politics. During the primary season, more voters under the age of 30 cast their ballots for Bernie Sanders than for Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump combined. But now that Clinton is the presumptive nominee, how will those who supported Sanders impact the vote in November? And will some even turn to Trump? In the Loop met with a handful of millennials living here in Chicago to find out.
I think that it is wonderful that we're at a point in our nation's history where a woman may end up being president. I think it's about time. I think that's really important.
Bernie inspired me. I believed in a vision. I believe in the movement that he's creating. I can't say right now that I would definitely cast my vote for Hillary, though.
Two young women, both in their late 20s, both passionate voters, both very active in the community. Kathleen Dillon, the political coordinator at the Heartland Cafe in Rogers Park, believes that for millennials like her, this election is not about a traditional liberal agenda, but a movement for real change.
The difference I see between liberal and progressive is the action element, and not just spouting off ideals about justice, but actively moving toward a more just society.
Amanda Weaver, director of a grassroots political organization called Reclaim Chicago, says Sanders appealed to her because she's grown disillusioned with most other politicians.
When I see millions and millions and billions of dollars being put into candidates' campaigns, I know who they're working for at the end of the day, and it's not me and my interests.
Zachary Cook, a professor of political science at DePaul University, says millennials are more likely to be liberal because many are under considerable economic stress.
This is a generation that is struggling right now to find its place in the American workforce. And I do think you see that pushes them a little bit left on some of these economic issues.
Cook has written extensively about the millennial generation born between 1982 and 2000. He says they are more likely to believe the American economic system is rigged against them.
Interestingly, I think you would see some common ground there amongst some millennials who really gravitate to Bernie Sanders on the one hand, and others, for different reasons, depending on their diagnosis, who gravitate to Donald Trump.
For example, 26-year-old Chicagoan Dan Gallegos supports Trump. He co-founded a super PAC called The Art of the Deal.
Well, I formed it because I think Donald Trump is the only candidate who represents true change and the only candidate who's going to actually solve the problems that we're facing.
The Northwestern University graduate, who now works as an operations manager, believes members of his generation need to be less idealistic and more pragmatic when looking at the candidates and the issues.
I think in large part they really do care about the future of this country a great deal. I think a lot of them are a little bit misguided. They look at politics more at the surface level, more at the emotional level, rather than actually getting into the statistics and really the root cause of some of these problems.
Last person in the park's a rotten egg.
33-year-old Jamal Cole is also part of the millennial generation, but he says local action is more likely to lead to real change than national politics.
I try to figure out what I can do to make my block a safer place. And once we are connected on our block, then we can start thinking about, our entire neighborhood. Then we can start thinking about our entire city.
3 years ago, Cole formed a nonprofit called My Block, My Hood, My City. It takes teens living in troubled neighborhoods to experience other parts of the city.
A lot of teenagers told me they had never been downtown or they'd never seen the lake. Consequently, their entire worldview or what they thought was possible for themselves and their peers was geographically bound to their community.
According to Pew Research, 50% of millennials consider themselves politically independent, not reliably liberal or conservative. Whatever their political affiliations, millennials have voted less than other age groups in recent presidential elections. Many cite social issues such as gay marriage and immigration as motivating factors in voting.
It seems almost silly to me that it's something that we even have to legislate on, is who can marry who.
I kind of look at everybody the same, so I absolutely support equal rights for everyone.
When it comes to immigration, Gallegos points out that his father moved here legally from Mexico. Still, he supports Trump's plan to build a wall and deport undocumented immigrants.
Curing this nation from any foreign person who wants to come in illegally because we cannot vet those people. We have no idea who's coming in.
But Kathleen Dillon finds Trump's harsh anti-immigration rhetoric appalling.
We can't have people coming over to the States and children who are born here being stuck here while their parents are sent away.
And while Gallegos opposes any form of gun control, others think it's time for a change.
The NRA and big money is keeping us from having an honest conversation about what gun control could look like.
How does someone get to the point where they just lose all compassion towards somebody and pull out a big tool to kill that person? How can we reach that person first?
But Cole says more gun control probably won't work because he says criminals don't obey laws. Despite differences about how to address gun control, climate change, and economic struggles, the millennials we spoke to are united in their passion about the issues, and many are looking for a dramatic change in the status quo.
We're all too revved up to quit. This, like Bernie said, this was never just about the presidency, it was about a movement. And I don't think those of us who have really supported this campaign are just going to let that die.
One other note about millennials, the most educated generation in American history is seeing some of the slowest growth in wages. Since 2009, paychecks for recent college graduates have grown 60% more slowly than those of the general population. And now joining us to talk about this and other trending topics are Pat Brady, founder of Next Generation Strategies, James Thindwa, contributing columnist for In These Times magazine, and Susan Garrett, chair of the nonpartisan organization Illinois Campaign for Political Reform. And welcome, everyone. So, Pat, let me begin with you. What difference do you see the millennials making in November?
Could potentially have a huge difference if the Bernie people go over to Trump and actually put Donald Trump back in the game in an election. I think he's going to lose badly, but it'll be interesting to see where they go. And that's the lead-in segment was very interesting on how closely the millennials are, kind of the full circle to Bernie and Donald Trump. I think it's a great sign that they're so engaged, and I hope the Republican Party, which I have represented, understands that the millennials look at things differently. We need to get off the social issues. They don't care about gay marriage. I mean, they care about it, but they don't think that gay people should not be allowed to get married. And I think if the Republican Party does that and emphasizes that we're going to get you a better job, not like we've seen in the last 8 years, we're going to make your life better, and we're going to show you a better path, I think the millennials actually probably are more conservative than that lead-in piece might lead you to believe.
James, but the millennials, if you look at the voting numbers, they overwhelmingly went for Sanders. Mm-hmm. Do you see them getting as enthused about Hillary Clinton?
Well, it was referenced here that millennials are sort of fickle voters. They don't vote very frequently, and part of the reason people don't vote in general is that the candidates are really not speaking to their issues. And I think what happened with Bernie Sanders is that for the first time in a long time, they heard a candidate really speak to those gut issues, those real issues for them, free college and universities.
But do you think they'll have that same enthusiasm for Clinton?
Well, I think that, for example, yesterday she came out with a plan that almost mirrors Bernie Sanders' plan for free college and
so she's moving in his direction.
And, yeah, she's moving in his direction. And the more she does that, the more likely she is to motivate these voters in November.
Susan, what about the point that Pat just made, that some of these Sanders voters may move over to the Trump side?
They may, and I think we're going to see a split. Just from watching the video, I think that these voters are pragmatic, which is what we heard. They're maybe not as partisan as we think they are. They're interested in issues that really matter to them. And they're thinking long term. We've all heard about these college expenses, how expensive it is to go to college, the debt that these students have been faced with over the years. That's something that's really important to them. They're going to identify with candidates who present them with issues that really are going to make a difference. Change is a key word here.